Journey's End, the 1928 Archie Sheriff play about the horrors of World War One, which has been filmed, before, severally filmed before. There's a famous James Whale version, isn't there, from 1930. So now Saul Dibb brings us this latest version. Saul Dibb's previous film was Suite Française, which I actually really liked, and I think it was underrated, didn't get quite the attention that it should have got. This, I thought, was terrifically good, and I'm familiar with the play and with the previous adaptations, but I thought this was really something. It has a very good ensemble cast: Paul Bettany, Sam Claflin, Toby Jones, Stephen Graham, Asa Butterfield, and what it does really well is to capture the day-to-day sort of squalor and grind and comradeship of life in the trenches towards the end of World War One, and it does that thing which is written into the play, but it's quite hard to capture dramatically and cinematically, of the balance between, on the one hand, grinding boredom and living in a just really difficult, wet, miserable circumstances, and on the other hand, abject terror. So the balance between boredom and terror, which is very well captured. Here's a clip.
We've got to make a raid, Uncle. Tomorrow afternoon, under a smoke screen, 2 officers, 10 men.
Who's going?
You. And Rally.
Why Rally?
You to direct, Rally to dash in.
You want me to tell him?
I'll tell him.
Tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
What time?
5 o'clock.
5.
Cheer up, skipper.
We've got to make a raid tomorrow afternoon.
All of us?
Oh, just me, Rally, and 10 of the boys.
Rally?
Excuse me, sir.
We only just got here. And you too?
Me too.
What a nuisance.
Yes, that's what I thought.
I think Paul Bettany, you can hear it just in that clip. What he's managing to do is to capture. It's funny. If you think that we now live in a post-Blackadder world in which there was that, the best series of Blackadder was the series that was dealing with World War One, and it had that kind of thing about the clipped Britishness, the sense of desperation. If you remember the end of that series of Blackadder, which actually had it was comedy and tragedy, and then there's the most sort of tragedy and pathos-laden ending, which apparently they arrived at pretty much the last moment. And that's something which has been sort of used and talked about so much that it's quite hard to breathe new life into it. But I think this does it really well. I think in that Paul Bettany performance, particularly, you hear it. It's on the one hand, it's the stiff upper lip. I thought you'd say that. The nuisance, but also the feeling that there is a real character there. There is a real character there facing an abyss. And I think that's really well done. I also think that the film does a brilliant job of cranking up the tension as we move towards, the raid, which is spoken of, and also the imminent attack, which is sort of, hanging in the air like a kind of poisonous cloud overshadowing everything. And during the course of the narrative, what happens is that, a very young character played by Asa Butterfield comes in, and he sees this person who he has idolised, who he used to know from school, played by Sam Claflin, Stanhope. And Stanhope, by this point, is completely rattled. He is riddled with regret and anger and bitterness and alcohol. And there is a very strong suggestion that what happens is that the young character looks at the character who's been in the trenches during the course of the war and sees, this is what war does to you. This is what this campaign does to you. This is what this life, this is what this existence does to you. But it does it in a very understated way. It doesn't do a big thing of saying this is what the staging of this is saying. It just lets it breathe. Toby Jones has this brilliant role when he's playing. He's preparing the food, and there's humour, there's laughter in there. When he says, what have we got for the cutlets? What kind of cutlets are they? Well, they're cutlets, because he's not sure what the meat is. Someone else he's asked to identify food. He says, what is it? He says, it's yellow. And so all that is in there, all that, that comradeship, that there's a scene with one character tucking another character in at night. There's an intimacy. There is a sense of people really living their lives together in abject circumstances. And also that overwhelming sense of the extraordinary loss of life, the extraordinary sacrifice, the extraordinary, stamina of people in this circumstances, in those trenches. I mean, I've never done this. I mean, so many people have talked about doing this, about going to France, going to see the trenches, some of which are still there. And people say, if you've ever been there, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And I thought that what the film managed to do was to create something that was moving and engaging, and had that wit in it, had that very British quality to it in those parts of the dialogue. And I really, particularly Paul Bettany for me, really sort of nailed that perfectly. But also it was harrowing and heartbreaking and cinematic. I mean, it's not a big budget film, but it's a film which takes that, that story which we've seen done in so many ways and puts it on the screen in a new way, which is vibrant and moving and powerful, and much more powerful than I expected. I confess that I went in thinking, well, I know this story and I know this play, but I did from almost the off. It was like, okay, fine. This is bringing it to life. This is making it immediate. This is engaging. And I thought it was very powerful. And a lot of that is down to very solid ensemble cast.